As the sun was setting in Umuahia, Chidi and Nwosu stood at his shop door, looking at the empty street. The town, once full of life, now seemed quiet and sad. Chidi could smell burning trash mixed with the sweet scent of roasting corn nearby. It showed how the town was caught between old ways and new. Chidi was 32, but he looked older. His hands were rough from carving masks, just like his father used to do. The shop behind him was quiet, filled with masks that no one seemed to want anymore. Chidi, still working late, called out a familiar voice. It was Emeka, Chidi's neighbor and old friend, walking with a slight limp from an old injury. Chidi tried to smile. Someone has to keep the old traditions alive, Emeka. Emeka looked worried. But at what cost? Your father wouldn't want you to suffer like this. Chidi felt a pain in his chest at the mention of his father. What should I do? Give up everything he built? Emeka sighed. Not give up, but maybe change things a bit? My cousin in Lagos. Yes, I know, Chidi cut in, sounding a bit angry. There's good money in technology. In leaving all this behind, he waved his hand at the shop and the street around them. Emeka put his hand on Chidi's shoulder. I worry about you, my friend. When did you last visit the Odenigbo shrine? Maybe the ancestors can help. Chidi laughed, but not happily. The ancestors have been quiet for a long time, Emeka. I'm not sure they remember us anymore. After Emeka left, Chidi looked at an old photo in his shop window. It showed his father holding a mask he had just made, looking happy and proud. That night, Chidi couldn't sleep. Around midnight, he went to his father's old workshop. The door creaked as he opened it, and the room smelled musty and old. Moonlight came through dirty windows, making strange shadows on the walls. What am I even looking for? Chidi muttered. He touched an old chisel, remembering how his father taught him to use it. Carefully, Chidi, his father's voice echoed in his mind. The wood will speak to you if you listen. Chidi felt like crying. He wanted so badly to hear the wood speak again. As he turned to leave, he tripped on a loose floorboard. Under it, he found a hidden package wrapped in cloth. Inside was a mask unlike any he'd ever seen. It wasn't finished, but it seemed alive somehow. It had swirling patterns all over it, and its empty eyes seemed to look right into Chidi's soul. What were you working on, Papa? Chidi whispered. The wood felt warm when he touched it, so without thinking, he started to finish the mask. Chidi worked all night. His hands seemed to know what to do, even though he'd never made a mask like this before. As the sun was coming up, he made the last cut and accidentally cut his finger. A drop of blood fell on the mask. Chidi was shocked to see the blood disappear into the wood. The mask got warm, like it was alive. Tired but excited, Chidi went home with the mask and fell asleep. He had strange dreams about swirling patterns and eyes that followed him. So the next morning, Chidi woke up suddenly. For a moment, he thought it had all been a dream. But there was the mask, seeming to look at him as he got up. Today will be different, Chidi told himself. He got dressed quickly and took the mask with him to the market. The market was busy, full of people and smells of food cooking. Chidi set up his stall, nervous about what to do next. Chidi, I was hoping to see you, someone called. It was Adana, a young journalist who had been asking about old traditions. Good morning, Adana, Chidi said, his hand touching the mask in his bag. Adana looked excited. I've been thinking about that article we talked about, the one about old crafts and how they're changing. I think it could help people get interested in your work. As Adana talked, Chidi felt the mask in his bag. Without really thinking about it, he took it out. What do you think of this? He asked, showing her the mask. Adana's eyes got big. Chidi, that's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. Is this a new design? Chidi hesitated, then nodded. Something I've been working on. It's a mix of old and new, you could say. Suddenly, Chidi felt like he had to put on the mask. When he did, everything changed. He could hear clearer, see colors brighter, and he could hear thoughts, everyone's thoughts. He heard Adana thinking, "This mask is stunning. It could be perfect for my story, but there's something strange about it." Chidi stepped back, overwhelmed. He could hear thoughts from all over the market, people's hopes, fears, and secrets. It was exciting and scary at the same time. "Chidi, are you okay?" Adana asked, looking worried. Chidi tried to focus. "I'm fine," he said, but his voice sounded weird to him. "Just a bit dizzy. Haven't eaten yet today." Adana looked concerned. She thought, "He's hiding something. I can tell. Should I ask him about it?" "No, he looks too upset right now." "Maybe you should sit down," she said out loud, reaching out to help him. Chidi moved away from her. He was afraid of what else he might hear if she touched him. "No, I need some air. Excuse me." He rushed away from the market, leaving Adana confused. As he got farther from the crowd, the voices in his head got quieter, but he could still remember what he'd heard. In a quiet alley, Chidi leaned against a wall, breathing hard. He took off the mask and stared at it, feeling both amazed and scared. What had his father made? And what was he supposed to do with this power? As he calmed down, Chidi thought about all the things he could do with this mask. He could save his business, maybe even help people. But was it right to hear people's private thoughts? He remembered something his father used to say, "Our craft is not just about making masks, Chidi. It's about connecting the seen and unseen worlds. It's a big responsibility, not just a special privilege." Chidi looked at the mask in his hands. Its eyes seemed to challenge him. He had to make a choice, one that would change his future, and maybe even the future of Umuahia. As he stood there, trying to decide what to do, he remembered an old saying his grandmother used to say, "The same fire that cooks your food can burn your house down." The mask's power was real, and it was his to use, but every gift comes with a price, and Chidi felt like he was just starting to understand how much this one might cost. He wrapped the mask carefully and put it away. He needed time to think and plan. Maybe he should talk to someone who understood the old ways better than he did. As Chidi walked home, Umuahia seemed different somehow. He noticed shadows he'd never seen before, and he thought he could hear whispers in the wind. He felt like by finishing the mask, he had started something big, something that went beyond his small shop and his hopes of saving his father's craft. For better or worse, Chidi knew his life would never be the same. As night fell over Umuahia, the mask waited in the dark, its unblinking eyes fixed on a future only it could see. In the days that followed Chidi's discovery of the mask's power, whispers began to spread through Umuahia like wildfire. People talked about how Chidi seemed to know things he shouldn't, how he could give advice that was eerily accurate. Some called it a gift, others called it witchcraft. At the market, Mama Neka approached Chidi's stall, wringing her hands nervously. "Chidi, I heard you might be able to help me," she said, her voice low. "My son, he's been acting strange lately. I fear he's fallen in with a bad crowd." Chidi hesitated, his hand instinctively moving to the mask hidden in his bag. "I'm not sure how much help I can be, Mama Neka," he said. "Please," she begged, "just if you hear anything." Sighing, Chidi nodded and put on the mask, pretending to examine some carvings. Immediately, Mama Neka's thoughts flooded his mind. Caught him with those boys from the motor park. I'm sure they're stealing. Oh, if his father were still alive. "Mama Neka," Chidi said gently, removing the mask, "have you checked near the motor park? Sometimes young men hang out there when they're looking for trouble." Mama Neka's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Thank you, Chidi. I'll go there right away." As she hurried off, Chidi noticed others watching him, some with curiosity, others with fear. He felt a mix of pride and unease. Later that day, Adana stopped by his shop. Her eyes were narrowed with suspicion. "Chidi, we need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "What's on your mind, Adana?" Chidi asked, trying to sound casual. "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "How do you suddenly know so much about everyone?" "People are talking, Chidi. Some are scared." Chidi's heart raced. He couldn't tell her the truth, but he hated lying to his oldest friend. "I've just become more observant," he said lamely. "You know how small towns are. People talk." Adana didn't look convinced. "Observant? Chidi, you told old man Okafor where to find his missing goat. You knew about the Inamani twins' secret engagement before their parents did. This isn't just being observant." "Maybe I've always been observant, and people are only now noticing," Chidi said, forcing a laugh. "You know, since the mask-making business has been slow, I've had more time to pay attention to what's going on around town." Adana stared at him for a long moment. "I don't believe you," she said finally. "But I hope you know what you're doing. And I hope you remember that secrets have a way of coming out, especially in Umuahia." As she left, Chidi slumped in his chair, guilt gnawing at him. He hated keeping secrets from Adana, but how could he explain the truth? A few days later, a sleek car pulled up in front of Chidi's shop. A tall man in an expensive dress stepped out. Chief Izuko, one of the wealthiest and most influential men in Umuahia. "Ah, the famous Chidi Ndwasu," Chief Izuko said, his voice smooth as oil. "I've heard interesting things about you." Chidi stood up straight, suddenly aware of his dusty work clothes. "Chief Izuko, this is an honor. What can I do for you?" The chief's eyes glinted. "I have a proposition for you, young man. Walk with me." As they strolled through town, Chief Izuko spoke of his plans for Umuahia new businesses, better roads, a modern hospital. "But to make these changes, I need to be in a position of power," he said. "And for that, I need someone like you by my side." Chidi's mind raced. "Someone like me?" Chief Izuko stopped, fixing Chidi with an intense stare. "Someone who understands people, Chidi. Someone who can anticipate their needs and concerns. I want you as my personal advisor." Chidi's breath caught in his throat. This was his chance away to save his business, to help his community. But could he trust Chief Izuko? I'm honored," Chief Chidi stammered. "But I'm just a simple mask maker. I'm not sure I'm qualified for such a position." Chief Izuko laughed, a big booming sound. "Nonsense. You have a gift, Chidi, and I'm offering you a chance to use it for the greater good. Think of the changes we could make together." Chidi thought of his struggling shop, of the dying traditions he was trying to keep alive. He thought of all the people in Umuahia who needed help. Maybe this was why he'd found the mask, to make a real difference. "All right," Chidi said finally, "I accept." Chief Izuko's smile was triumphant. "Excellent. We'll start tomorrow. I have a meeting with some potential investors. Your insights could be very valuable." The next day, Chidi found himself in a plush office, wearing a new suit provided by Chief Izuko. As the investors filed in, Chidi put on the mask, pretending to adjust his tie. Immediately, their thoughts bombarded him. "Hope this Izuko character doesn't waste our time. Heard rumors about labor issues at his factory. Wonder if he knows about the new regulations coming." Chidi whispered the information to Chief Izuko, who used it masterfully. He addressed the investors' concerns before they even voiced them, seeming almost prescient. By the end of the meeting, they were eating out of his hand. "Brilliant work, Chidi," Chief Izuko exclaimed after they left. "With you by my side, there's no limit to what we can achieve." Over the next few weeks, Chidi's life changed dramatically. He moved into a big house provided by Chief Izuko, wore expensive clothes, and ate at fancy restaurants. His advice helped the chief outmaneuver his political rivals and win over influential supporters. But as time went on, Chidi began to feel uneasy. He saw how Chief Izuko used the information he provided, not always for the good of the community, but often for personal gain. One day, they attended a town hall meeting. Chief Izuko was answering questions from the public, with Chidi whispering information in his ear. An old woman stood up. "Chief, what about the promise to rebuild the community school? Our children are studying in classrooms with leaky roofs. Chidi, wearing the mask, heard her thoughts. My granddaughter got sick from the mold. We can't afford the private school like the chief's children. He whispered to Chief Azuko, who responded smoothly, My dear, I understand your concerns. In fact, I have plans to not just rebuild the school but to provide scholarships for deserving students. Your granddaughter might be an excellent candidate. So the old woman beamed and the crowd murmured approvingly. But Chidi knew the truth. There were no such plans. Chief Azuko had just made that up on the spot to win favor. As they left the meeting, Chidi felt sick. Chief, he said hesitantly, about the school and the scholarships. Chief Azuko waved his hand dismissively. Don't worry about that, Chidi. People hear what they want to hear. By the time they realize nothing's happening, they'll have forgotten who promised what. Chidi stopped in his tracks. But sir, these people need help. Real help. We can't just lie to them. The chief's eyes hardened. Chidi, my boy, this is politics. We tell people what they need to hear to get into a position where we can actually make changes. You understand that, don't you? Chidi nodded slowly, but inside he was conflicted. This wasn't what he had envisioned when he accepted the chief's offer. He was using people's private thoughts against them, manipulating their hopes and fears. Was this really the right thing to do? That night, Chidi couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the old woman at the meeting, about all the people who believed in Chief Azuko because of the information Chidi had provided. He got up and looked at himself in the mirror, the mask sitting on the dresser beside him. What have I become? He whispered to his reflection. The mask seemed to stare back at him, its empty eyes holding no answers, only more questions. Chidi realized he was at a crossroads. He had the power to know people's deepest thoughts, but was he using that power responsibly? Was he really helping his community, or just helping Chief Azuko gain more power and wealth? As the first light of dawn crept through his window, Chidi made a decision. He couldn't continue like this. Somehow he had to find a way to use the mask's power for real good, not just political manipulation. But how could he do that without losing everything he'd gained? The mask sat silently on the dresser, its presence a constant reminder of the choice Chidi had to make, and the consequences that would follow.